Priscilla Clarke went missing in May 1988. Now, Priscilla worked as a nanny for a family in Enniskerry, and she'd go horse riding often with Lynda Kavanagh, who was her employer. They'd usually go through the Powerscourt estate and across the Dargle River, and it's believed that the two women somehow went into the water and were washed downstream. Lynda Kavanagh's body was recovered 2 days later, but they never found Priscilla.
It's your worst nightmare to get a phone call to tell you that Priscilla's missing. We don't know, we've been searching for a period of time. There's a river involved, or maybe involved, in her being missing, and we'll continue searching. So your mind doesn't take in all that information, you're just hit by the shock, really. My father was elderly. He still thought of Priscilla every day. So she never left his life up to the age of 91 when he died. At the moment, the headstone we have erected for Dad just has her name on it. Priscilla Clarke, missing 1988. So that's the record that's there. We remember her, but we know she's not there. Yeah, it leaves you in a very difficult space. You know you have to keep searching, and you know that you have to keep thinking and being as positive as you possibly can. And you know, you're just thinking every day, she's going to be found. You know, she's going to be found today. This is the day, and the day passes, and another day passes. It's an endless search still. It's the difficulty with a missing person. You can never have all the answers. You're left always churning questions in your mind.
You're very welcome. Episode 47 of Radio Espial, radioespial.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, X as they now call it. We don't do too much on Instagram. We are there. I want to get straight into this. 1988 is where we're going back to. We're going to start with our case summary. On Tuesday, the 3rd of May, 1988, two persons were sighted on horses around the area of Powerscourt, County Wicklow, Ireland. One was recognised as Lynda Kavanagh. The other person was not immediately identified, but believed to be Priscilla Clarke. The Kavanaghs live in Nanny. 2 days later, Lynda Kavanagh's body was recovered from the local River Dargle. Priscilla's body was never recovered, and her family were never able to bring closure and finality to her disappearance. She was aged 25 at the time, and the mystery of her disappearance has lasted for 36 years. Priscilla Clarke grew up in County Louth, a devoted daughter to her parents and a loving sister to her siblings. In 1983, after attaining her qualifications to be a nursery nurse, she was employed as a live-in nanny with Mark and Lynda Kavanagh, providing loving and devoted care to the young family. In late 1987, Priscilla and the Kavanaghs moved to Enniskerry, County Wicklow. Now, something of the case background and a little bit more about Priscilla. Priscilla Clarke is originally from Edmondstown, RD, County Louth, but at the time she went missing she was working at Ballyorney House, Enniskerry, County Wicklow, as a nanny for a married couple with 3 children. Keelan, 15, Michael, age 8, and Serena, I believe, was around 4, just touching 5 years of age. Priscilla was born on the 10th of August in 1962 to Paddy and Nan Clarke. Nan, it was like a nickname. It was actually Anne, Anne Clarke. She was one of 5 children. Maura later became part of the Sisters of Charity and took on the name Sister Teresa. Priscilla and her twin brother Robert, I believe Robert was a minute or two born earlier. Claire, another sister, and the youngest in the family, Frida. The family grew up on a farm in RD, and so Priscilla was very much the outdoors type of person and thrived on activities like looking after animals, horse riding and swimming. She was outgoing and loved conversation and filling a room with her love and presence. Initially, after school, Priscilla took summer jobs at a veterinarian clinic and also a psychiatric clinic. Ultimately, Priscilla trained at Temple Hill Hospital in Blackrock and also St. Patrick's Infant Dietetic Hospital, and spent several happy years working with the nursery infants there. She adored babies and loved caring for them. It was this passion for childcare that brought her to work for Mark Kavanagh, a well-known Irish property developer and entrepreneur, and his wife Lynda, who was originally from Chicago. They were a prominent, affluent and successful couple. Mark had set up the Captain America's restaurant on Dublin's Grafton Street, and he owned a number of other properties. In 1987, Priscilla moved with the couple to the new family home at Ballyoney House, Enniskerry, County Wicklow. She had been working with the family for almost 5 years, following job offer from an agency in 1983 after her nursery studies. Originally, she had just been taken on by the Kavanaghs for several months to look after their newborn child, Serena, so Lynda could go back to work. Priscilla was happy. She was earning £90 a week with full board and the use of a Mazda family car. The Kavanaghs would often allow her to drive back to RD and take Michael and Keelan with her to see her family. The family had previously resided at Bullock Harbour, Dalkey and later Ballybrack. By then, she had long formed a close bond with the couple and their children. She would travel with them on holiday trips as well. But Priscilla wasn't just the nanny, she was an integral part of the family's life and their friendship together. In 1987, the Kavanaghs had one child at a secondary boarding school in Rathfarnham. I think that was Keelan, the eldest, age 15, and 2 younger children still at primary school and living at home. Priscilla would look after the school runs in the mornings and early afternoons. In the 1989 book Out on Their Own by Ivor Kenny, looking at Irish businessmen and entrepreneurs, Mark Kavanagh describes Priscilla as a lovely girl. She was like my eldest daughter. She was a great friend to Lynda, and the children all adored her. And we're going to bring in Ciarán McConnell. Will be joining us in a second. Just first of all, on our case summary and background. That image you're seeing there, that's Priscilla during her time as a nurse at Temple Hill Hospital in Blackrock, County Dublin, and that was a family photo shared for us. Priscilla did travel with the family. This is actually the image you're seeing here, I think, on the working from the right to left. That's Lynda's mother, Lynda herself. Priscilla, the taller one, in the background. I think that's the eldest daughter, and also one of the younger kids. Okay, so let's move on. That's the book I mentioned, and you'll hear other mentions of quotes in it. That's Ivor Kenny, Out on Their Own, Conversations with Irish Entrepreneurs. Ciarán, you're part of the furniture at this stage.
Yeah. No need for an introduction, I hope.
No need for an introduction. Kieran McCONNELL, Irish Cold Cases, Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. You can see the links in the description. Kieran, initial
Thanks,
thoughts
Nick.
on this case?
Yeah, no, the only time I became familiar with this case actually was only, I think, about 5 years ago. I read Barry Cummins's book Without a Trace, and it's a very sad case, isn't it? That one woman was found and the other one wasn't. I think you discussed it in the timeline as we go on that the both families kind of on two separate paths of grief.
Yeah, I think that's the most
Very,
difficult thing about this case.
yeah, because the other family, I suppose, the woman that was found, they probably have some sort of guilt or something about it, just that Priscilla was never found.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we'll delve into that more, but yeah,
Yeah.
let's get straight into it.
She got a lot. She got a lot done in her young life, though. By 25, she
She
achieved a
did.
lot.
She was a
Been to a lot of
very
places.
outdoors, very enthusiastic
Yeah.
person. You know, she'd travelled. She'd already done an awful lot in her young life at age 25. Her timeline begins March to May, coming up to the incident date, 1988. So, Priscilla had recently met a young man at a disco in Dublin and quickly started dating him. Pat Lyons from Mullingar worked in Dublin as a customs officer, and the pair soon became an item. She had already went on trips to her parents in RD with Pat. The couple were planning to go on holidays to Canada together that summer. Now, Friday, Saturday, this is April the 30th, 31st. This would have been the weekend before incident date. Priscilla had just returned from a holiday visit with the Kavanaghs to Aspen, Colorado, and decided to swap her days off so she could visit her family in RD. She brought her family presents from her trip to Aspen and informed them that she and Pat would be going to Canada in the summer. She babysat for her elder sister, Claire. You're going to hear more from Claire later in this timeline. That weekend in Navan, where Claire lived. Originally, May the 3rd, the following Tuesday, was meant to be her day off. So, Tuesday, May the 3rd, these are the established events and all the known facts of that day. We're going to start at 4:15 p.m. Tuesday, May the 3rd. Lynda Kavanagh speaks with her husband Mark on the phone. He is in Dublin working for the family property business Hardwick Properties and also chairman of Custom House Docklands Development. He's been in and out of meetings all day. Lynda tells him that she and Priscilla are going out on the horses for a ride of about an hour, and they will see him when he returns to Ballyoney House that evening. The pair had wanted to get out on the horses for several days, but rain had prevented it. By lunchtime, the rain had cleared. So just to be clear, because I think this is important, for 3 or 4 days there was constant sort of rain, and it by morning into this mid to late afternoon it had dissipated. So at around 4:20 to 4:25 p.m, Lynda Kavanagh rings her neighbour and friend Margaret Doyle. She wonders if Margaret's eldest daughter Michelle come over and mind her daughter. This is something that had happened before as well. 5-year-old Serena. Margaret suggests that they drop Serena over to the house instead because Michelle actually wasn't home that day. At 4:35 p.m, approximately around this time, we can't be certain of the minute, Lynda and Priscilla take the two horses out for an hour's ride locally. They intend to be back at Ballyoney House just before 6 p.m. Margaret Doyle would later report that the two women set off en mount shortly after 4:30 p.m. after dropping Serena off at her house, Margaret Doyle's house. At 6:15 p.m, Mark Kavanagh rings home, but there's no answer from the house. He waits a while, and at 7:30 p.m, We now move onto the outside road next to Ballyoney House. Peter Short was close to home, having been at work in Dublin for the day. His house was situated on a road just a short distance from Powerscourt waterfall in County Wicklow. As he drove along Ballyoney House, heading south, he slowed down his car when he noticed two horses ahead. Not an uncommon sight, especially in late spring. But these two horses didn't have riders. Yet both horses wore saddles and bridles. One appeared to be an adult horse, the other more the size of a pony. As he got closer, he could see the reins of one horse hanging freely, and the other horse's reins were still around its head and mane in the standard riding position. He managed to manoeuvre his car around the two horses and pulled up at Ballyoney House. As the two horses approached, he managed to settle them and get them off the road and out of danger. It was then he observed that the saddles of both horses were dripping wet. I think sodden is what comes up in the case reports and the Gardaí file, visibly to the touch, as well as. Now, I'm going to go into this map here. You don't need to. I'm going to go into it in detail in this next video insert. There's lots of points. Most of the points on this map I'm going to explain to a degree, so you get an idea of the, should we say, the clockwise pattern that the women followed, and the certain significant points of people mentioned in this case, from Peter Short on the Ballyoney Road to Brenda in Charville Estate, to Powerscourt, north and south areas there, the River Dargle itself. So let's take a look at that video, and we're going to do a kind of a short drive through, but I'm concentrating this drive through on the area where the horses came back eventually to the Ballyoney Road. So let's take a look at that video. Okay, let's take a look at that route. First of all, the area on the orange line is the main Ballyoney Road. Where I'm indicating here at the bottom is Ballyroan House itself, where Priscilla and Lynda and Mark and the children lived, and not too far from it, just going north, was the veterinarian centre and farm. The other orange areas are the possibility areas where Priscilla and Lynda entered the estate lands and got to the River Dargle. The darker blue line that you see there, that is the River Dargle, and it's believed somewhere at this very top is where the incident occurred as they were crossing back across. Now I'm thinking they crossed back across from the west side to the east side of the river. Just for other indications, you see Charleville House indicated, and lower down towards the bottom left you'll see part of the Powerscourt Centre. This is the Spring Hill farm, but much further north, that larger circle at the top right, that's the larger area of the Powerscourt Centre. I think that's actually towards the waterfall. The area up at the top where you see this purple heavy mark, that I believe is the bridge that they were heading for on their way back. Now obviously they never got to that point. In a sense, if you think of this map, they were operating in a clockwise direction. So think of it in a clockwise direction. They left Ballyoney House, headed south, and then immediately across west, entered through Charleville, through some of the lands between Powerscourt and Charleville, and then onto the river bank. Now, at some stage, it's clearly this isn't mentioned as much in the case, but at some point they had to get onto that west side bank on the Powerscourt side, and how they did that isn't certain in the case files. But obviously the tragedy is later, as they moved northeast along the riverbank and attempted to recross the river to ultimately get back onto the Ballyoney Road. That's where the tragedy occurred. Let's take a little video insert, and I think you'll see what I mean. And I'm going to show you Ballyoney House, or one of the entrances to it, and we're coming to it now. And that's one of the entrances to Ballyoney House. I don't believe that's the actual driveway. I think that's more of a walkway. And as with a lot of these estate houses, there are quite a number of side entrances, back entrances, front entrances to get to the actual estate areas. What you're looking at here, this is the veterinarian clinic, just slightly further up the road. I'm back out now of the driveway of the veterinarian clinic area. And we're now heading down the R760 Ballyroan. We're heading north now. So if we were going in the direction of Bray, this would be the direction we were heading. So imagine two horses, a pony and a larger adult horse. And remember, this is the road that Peter Short located the horses on, unsaddled and roaming along, and he parked his car and brought them towards the veterinarian clinic. We're just heading up in the direction now. This will be the way back for the horses. This is the way it's likely that the horses headed back after the accident. This is one of the entrances into Charleville House. This is where Brenda Rowan lived. So this is just for reference to some of the people we mentioned in the timeline, so you can just get a spatial idea. Now here, this is a bridge. The horses probably more likely was the one that they crossed on the way back after dismounting on the accident. Again, this is on Google Maps many years later. Please don't take the water levels as they were. They were not the same at the time. Another premises entrance. And we're going to head back up in the direction it's believed that the two horses roaming after the incident would have headed back. So we're heading back now towards Ballyoney House. Okay, again, this is really just to give you a visual, spatial perspective of the area. I would love to be able to do the actual area where the incident happened, but you know, clearly Google doesn't provide that element of detail beyond the map. It's strictly through accessible roads from Google Maps. And we're back at Ballyoney House, one of the entrances. It's not the only entrance to the property. Okay, that's it. Now at around 8 p.m, Peter Short, having found these two horses, slowly he walks both horses to the nearby home of local vet Larry Dunn. Larry was out on farm calls as a veterinarian, but his sister Anne and her daughter Alva thought they recognised the adult horse locally, owned by Brenda Rohan from Charvel House. They called her, and when Brenda herself arrived, she confirmed that yes, the 20-year-old horse was Sheila D, a placid horse. Brenda was also quite certain that Lynda had acquired a new pony in recent weeks. The other younger horse was very likely to be that same pony. Something clearly had happened, and concerns were raised why both horses would be out, loose and saddled up. The occupants of Ballyoney House were already frantic. Lynda Kavanagh and her live-in nanny, Priscilla Clarke, had left hours earlier that afternoon and had still not returned. At 8:15 p.m, still working late in Dublin, Mark Kavanagh rings home again. His 9-year-old son answers, I think this was Michael. Was it Michael? I think it was Michael. And tells him that he has just returned home, dropped off by a neighbour, but his mum and Priscilla are not there and the horses are not in the stable. Mark immediately leaves for his home in Enniskerry, Wicklow, sensing something is wrong. Around 9 p.m, he arrives home just as Margaret Doyle is dropping Serena. Remember, she was minding Serena, and Serena was meant to be picked up at 6 p.m. from her house. She's bringing Serena now back to Ballyoney House. I'm probably wondering what on earth's going on. Why didn't the two women come back to pick her up? She's been expecting both Lynda and Priscilla, or one of them, to have picked up Serena at 6 p.m. This also coincides. They know something's up. Something's wrong here. Yeah, something's seriously up here. This also coincides with the time Brenda and Anne from Charvel estate arrived to Ballyoney House and informed Mark that the two horses were found riderless by Peter Short on the road. Mark Kavanagh rings Shankill Gardaí, reporting that his wife and their nanny are missing following a horse ride late that afternoon. Local vet Larry Dunn, who just lives a short distance up the road, having arrived back and having heard the news, heads over to the Kavanagh's home and helps arriving Gardaí with the search itself. Obviously a local man, a horseman, a veterinarian, understands the local area. Kieran, is there anything you want to come in there?
No, it's like, it's quite it's a very straightforward case, isn't it? In a sense, like there's not really dispute about what may have happened. Yeah, the more talking points are kind of what happened in the subsequent days and, like, I suppose years after, when it comes to this case.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wonder about their experience with horses, you know, like out like that. Like, it's a very rugged terrain.
Both appeared to have experience with horses, but I get the sense that, ironically, the 25-year-old, the nanny, Priscilla Clarke, maybe had a little bit more experience, and consequently,
She's
because
from the countryside.
consequently, this is, I know, we'll talk about it later. This is the big question, because automatically you assume an adult horse, 20 years old, 17 hands high, a pony 13 hands high, much smaller horse, and you wonder, well, why was Lynda Kavanagh on the pony? And maybe it was just simply because it was a new pony loaned to her. She wanted just to get used to the pony used to her, and she thought it would be just safer and better that she handled the pony, whereas Priscilla
pony, I suppose,
had considerable experience over I think 2 or 3 years with the larger adult horse, Sheila D. So, you know, I can kind of understand, but yeah, you think, God foreboding, maybe that was the biggest mistake, you know, but we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Wednesday the 4th of May 1988. It's the day after, the early hours of the morning, 2:30 a.m. Mark Kavanagh calls Claire Clarke, Priscilla's sister. Already bereft, he is astounded to discover the Gardaí have not informed the Clarke family in Ardee, County Louth, that their beloved daughter is missing after a possible horse riding accident. It is he who has to break the news to them. A full-scale...
Like, that is the last thing that fella would need in this situation. Like,
and I can see where people are going, why did it take him till 2:30? I mean,
it's not his. He can't. He would have presumed that
he
the family
reported
had been
it.
informed.
He reported it the moment he got home. He knew something was seriously wrong.
Yeah.
So assumption was he gave all the details as to what he knew, what people and neighbours were telling him, witnesses were telling him, and he understandably gave all the information. Gardaí realised, serious problem, we'll be down to you, we'll start organising a search. He simply assumed it wasn't up to him to... with the greatest respect, Priscilla wasn't next of kin. She wasn't a family member. She was ultimately an employee, the nanny.
Yeah, it's like
he assumed
that happened at work.
Yeah.
You know, that like if something happens to you at work, your family are the first people to be informed by the authorities. You would hope.
So a full-scale Garda search begins around 10 p.m. and you can think even in where are we? May, even in May to July. You know, we're fairly. It's. I mean, even in May, it's. I mean, I'm sitting here.
No street light around.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I'm in the Netherlands now, and it's 13 minutes to 10 o'clock, and I'm telling you now, it's almost completely dark outside, and we're in the first week of May, because obviously the anniversary of this case would have been last week. So I can tell you now, in the Netherlands, and it wouldn't be dramatically different than Ireland, you know, at 10 o'clock in the evening, it's pretty much, it's dark now. So at 10 p.m, it is pretty much dark, and you're not going to do a great deal at 10 p.m. at night, even in an official search. So the immediate concentration is waterways around the Powerscourt area, and suspected trail the two horses took late on the previous afternoon. Soft mud hoof tracks were found, but the search teams needed light to arrive later the following morning. In the days that followed, the search team began to fully figure out the track the two women had taken, down a muddy lane on the Charvel estate, onto a ditch, onto a field which bordered the River Dargle, a second track along a ditch for about a third of a kilometre, then turning directly in line with the bordering river bank, and then another 400 metres along the bank itself to the point of a makeshift pole fence. Immediately to the other side was the river, with waters approximately 1 to 2 metres deep at the time, due to the heavy rainfall and a 9-metre stretch to the opposite side of the riverbank. I should mention
the river would have been like really fast flowing as well,
it
right?
would have been considerably fast flowing, particularly for this time of the year. This wouldn't have been a normal. This would have been a far greater flow of water, rapid flow of water for this time of water. Yeah.
So.
And there were within that region also points that were measured and recorded that rose to up to 2 meters, and that's like for in feet. You're getting up to 6 or 7 foot high.
Yeah,
It is likely the two women had followed the same local track before on previous settings and outings and attempted the same river crossing. So let's take into account, I don't want to overbear you with statistics. Sheila D, her rider is Priscilla, stood 17 hands high, and in meters that's 1.7 meters. Fudge, the pony rider, Lynda Kavanagh, much smaller at 13 hands high, and that's 1.3 meters. What you're seeing here in this diagram, and I'll do an outtake so you can look at this carefully and pause if you wish. So you can see Sheila D at 17 hands high, the measurement for horses. Fudge at the 13 hands high. And then what I'm showing you here now, this is the 3 to 4 feet or minimum maximum water level at this particular area. But we can't be certain exactly where exactly they went in. Could have been slightly up from where the hoof prints disappeared, slightly before it. It's possible they went in to the riverbank. They went, oh, it's a bit steep there, not sure about that, we'll travel
There's
up.
no way,
you can't be.
There's no way the little horse. There's no way the pony will be comfortable. You can
see the.
Looking at that.
You can see the difference there. The one thing a horse has to, and believe me, I've spent some of today talking to horse people because I am a horse person. But you can see the significant difference between those two horses superimposed. The pony in the transparent greenish colour, and the chestnut horse. This is obviously just a depiction of horse sizes, 17 hands to 13 hands. You can see from wither to hoof the way a horse is measured. That river was pretty much covering the pony right up to horseback where you sit with your saddle. The adult horse probably would have coped with it. Horses are, I mean,
they get spooked, don't they?
Yeah, no, this is what I was told today, and I got different answers today. I'll be honest. Some horses are like human beings. Some horses take to water like a duck to water. Some human beings don't like water, and some horses don't like water, and they get very nervous. It depends. But the most important thing I was told today was, as a rider, you need to be skilled in handling a horse in water, because it's not easy. Particularly if the hooves of a horse are not touching and walking along the riverbed and it's not shallow. Because once a horse floats with its massive lungs, it doesn't have the buoyancy that we do, because we spread out our hands when we fall in water instinctively. A horse doesn't have that ability. A horse has got four legs.
Wouldn't it?
It paddles.
Like a dog.
And once it floats, it doesn't have the lateral buoyancy. So it will throw you easily if it's not settled on the bed. So if the water height is enough, the moment that horse's hooves leave the bed, it starts to, it will float, it will instinctively try to swim, and it will swim very powerfully. And if you come off that horse,
you get kicked,
and you get hit by the hooves, by God, you'll feel it, and you'll get incapacitated by it. So you really need to understand, as a rider, your horse in water, how confident it is in water. Some are confident, some aren't. how experienced it has been in water, and most of all, you need to understand the terrain and the river you're trying to cross in that water. The depth. Are there obstacles? Are there rocks? How soft is the sediment below? Because anybody in a
that's
river,
a real worry.
you're walking out and suddenly, boom, you fall 2 feet lower because you've just hit a bank, a drop lower. So I'm going to examine this in later detail. So 4 to 5:30 a.m. in the morning of May the 4th, I think we were, the Clarke family travel from County Louth to Wicklow. They go directly to the Kavanagh household in Ballyoney. By morning, then Taoiseach Charles Haughey, another bit of a horseman himself, has contacted Mark Kavanagh, or a cowboy, to ask if anything more can be done to help with resources in the search. That's probably going to get our biggest laugh ever. Thursday the 5th of May at 1:30 p.m, so just after lunchtime, the body of a woman is located by the Sub-Wackwood team close to Kilcroney Silverbridge and removed from the local River Dargle. It has been trapped by some overhanging trees. This area is farthest northeast, downriver towards Bray, and some 5 to 6 kilometres plus from Ballyoney. It is certain that it is one of the 2 missing women. Mark Kavanagh and Paddy Clarke are requested to attend a call for identification at Loughlinstown Hospital where the body's been taken. One will leave knowing their wife is not coming home to their children. The other will leave without answers and any resolution. Patricia Clarke is still missing. The Kavanagh family ask former Government Press Secretary Frank Dunlop to assist them and act as a point of contact with the large media presence now gathering at their home at Ballyhoney. The Gardaí are sure they will locate Priscilla soon. That's just a picture of the River Dargle, and please don't read too much into this. That's a very shallow river and was not like it was at the time. And that's I think close to Shallotville Lodge.
It's wide enough, isn't it, though, when you look at it?
It varies. It varies in parts. It goes from, I think, 4 or 5 meters up to 9. I think there's even parts of it that are up to 15, 18 meters. So it varies, and it ambles quite a lot all the way, through to its obviously delta riverbed northeast. So Saturday 7th of May, the search begins to reveal some items of clothing in the River Dargle not belonging to Lynda Kavanagh. Lynda herself is laid to rest at a family funeral in Wicklow. Finally, a black riding boot is located on the river bank where Lynda's body was found. It bears the name Priscilla Clarke. Priscilla's boyfriend, Pat Lyons, working with Gardaí and using a pole, spots a wax jacket. I believe it was a brownish green wax jacket, and then a hat. The jacket belongs to Priscilla. The size of riding hat suggests it belongs to Lynda. The right hand jacket sleeve is turned inside out. A jumper is also found. The Clarke family would later contest that the jacket was a male fitting jacket and cigarettes were found in the pocket. Priscilla did not smoke. The Gardaí investigation team had 2 lines of inquiry: that they are dealing with a tragic horse riding accident or the remote possibility of a kidnapping. The latter line dissipates once Lynda's body was located. Despite searching more than 10 kilometres of the River Dargle, they still cannot locate Priscilla's body. Vets examine both horses and neither show any signs of injury or anything beyond what suggests an accident. On Tuesday the 24th of May 1988, so we're only 3 weeks later, at 7:30 p.m, a requiem mass is held for Priscilla in her local church. St Malachy's in Ardee, County Louth. Now in May also 1988, as the search and investigation stretches on, a local called Charlie Deegan provides witness information that he saw Lynda on the younger and smaller horse, Fudge, and that it was Priscilla on the bigger and older horse, Sheila D. His witness statement places Lynda and Priscilla on horseback near the entrance to Charleville Estate, which leads to the River Dargle. He didn't recognise Priscilla on Sheila D, but he was certain it was Lynda on the pony. This image, again, I'll try to do an insight. This is actually Priscilla on Sheila D, the adult larger horse, the 17-hand high horse. And this is not too long before the date of disappearance. And you can see when these two women went out for a riding trip, they were properly, reasonably dressed for the occasion. So anybody who thinks that they weren't, and we might touch on this later when we talk about Wexford women found on coastlines, Gardaí began to formulate a sequence of what may have happened. That the two women on horseback entered the Charleville Estate towards the River Dargle, tried to cross it, were both dismounted after the constant rains in recent days and rising level and flow, and the two horses had crossed the river and into the Powerscourt estate land, out the gate lodge, and trotted 3 kilometres, eventually back onto the Ballyoney road where they started out, a road that they would have been familiar with. And that's what a horse will do when it dismounts and loses its rider. Kieran?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't know the horse will find its way home like some dogs will.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Why not? I suppose. Yeah.
Lynda's body had been located about 3.5 kilometres at Silverbridge from this point of crossing, and that is where Peter Short picked the 2 horses up on the road, trotting freely. Actually, I think I checked this out. I think it was slightly further. I think it might have been closer to 5 to 6 kilometres, where ultimately Lynda's remains body was found. So in early July 1988, Gardaí suspend the search without having found Priscilla Clarke. An inquest is held into the death of Lynda Kavanagh. Her death is ruled accidental by drowning. Yet again, the Clarke family are not informed of the inquest date. That seems utterly just bizarre. Kieran?
Yeah, I was thinking when I was reading today your timeline and Barry Cummins' book, I hope this case changed protocol with these type of things within the guards, because the thing in the hospital where
the two
Kavanagh
men, Paddy Clarke and Mark Kavanagh, yeah.
That can't
is that the right protocol for one man to walk out and say, I'm sorry, Paddy, for your troubles. It's my wife, not your daughter. Why place 2 close relatives or or 2 families in that situation to cross paths?
Yeah, and you can't, and I don't mean you specifically. I mean, but people always say, "Oh, it was the times or whatever." But some things are just common sense. That's nothing to do with it being 1988. That's shouldn't be going on at any time.
Yeah, that's just human instinct and common sense and respect for relatives in a desperate situation.
They had liaison officers in the 80s.
I'm sure they were, but they obviously didn't do too well in this case, if there were appointed liaison officers, and I don't know the names of those liaison officers.
No, there's actually not much mention of any anyway, from what I read.
No, and I think I get the impression Gardaí at that time were really only getting more sophisticated with, from learning from the US and UK how better to deal with relatives and setting up proper protocols.
Yeah. See, I think we've said it on here before, but back then the guards really had one remit, and that was to stop the IRA and that type of stuff. That was their main objective on everything. They're very understandably that was what they were focused and probably vastly trained to do.
Okay, May 1991. The Kavanagh family moved on. Mark, 43, at the time of Lynda's death, remarried 2 years later to took up, I don't know her maiden name, Kathleen Kavanagh, and eventually left Ireland. I think he went away to, he just understandably wanted a fresh start, and I think it was Switzerland he moved to. Out on their own, he described how the death of Lynda changed his values. Lynda, his wife. Before her death, I did not value my wife or my children as much as I do today. That's the basic change. I took them for granted. They were part of my life to fit in when it suited me. Now that's rather reversed. I want to be there for the children's needs.
That's very honest, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very honest. You know, it's and I think for people who maybe say, oh, why, you know, again, going back to why did he take so long to contact the Clarke family? His argument was it my responsibility? Was it my remit? You know, people have to understand what was going on in my life. And I know there are going to be people who say, what? He remarried 2 years later? What's going on there? You know, and, you know, it's just... You know,
I never, like, when I read about the case, I never had any questions or any, like, bad thoughts.
People will look for things. People will look for ways out without facing the realities of what's actually happening when they examine a case, and they'll scurry to the corners to gossip and, you know,
And anyway, they were very good to Priscilla Clarke. Like, they were really good to her.
She was paid at the time reasonably okay wage. She had access to a car. She was free to come and go. They were flexible with her. She was brought on holidays. Now, obviously, understandably, that was partly to assist, but then she was paid. She was working for them. She was brought on holidays, you know. So, you know, and she came across to our family as extremely happy and delighted about what she was doing.
She was only meant to be there for
a few months
or something,
and she was doing it. She was doing it for 5 years. So, like, hello everybody. If you're not happy in the situation you were in, as a young person, you don't continue doing it for 5 years if you're not happy in that situation. So finally, an inquest into Priscilla Clarke's death is held in, I think, 1991. It is only then that her family learned that Priscilla had spoken to a gardener at lunchtime on May the 3rd, 1988, working at the Kavanagh household. The gardener also revealed that a few weeks before the tragedy, Priscilla had told him that Fudge the pony had actually thrown Lynda from her mount onto the ground when it was startled. Priscilla's inquest ruled that, like Lynda, Priscilla died by drowning. The inquest rules that Priscilla Clarke's death was the result of an unfortunate accident. Now, this is always difficult for the families because they're always constantly thinking, where is she? And any news they hear of somebody found, you know, there's no closure. Everything is open-ended. So in 1995, a woman's body is washed ashore on the Ballinamona beach in Kilmuckridge. I know it quite well as a kid, going there, County Wexford. I'm sure several of us do, from Dublin. Once again, the Clarke family is never informed of the discovery. The woman is wearing a pair of Lee jeans, manufactured in Belgium in 1986, and a pair of flat-heeled shoes, size 30. On the insole of the shoes was a 4-star symbol and the wording "Made in France." In her pocket is a key to a Volkswagen car. That image, again, I'll try and do an insert out so you can pause the video and take a close look at it if you want. That's the shoes on the Lee jeans. But the body will ultimately not prove to be Priscilla. Some other family may one day find some solace and resolution, but the Clarke family search on, still baffled by why their daughter, their sibling, is treated differently from the woman she disappeared with on the day in May that that should be 1988, not 1998. The family, this is 2007-2008, the family of Priscilla Clarke write to the then Minister for Justice, Michael McDowell, outlining the lack of contact and lacklustre approach to the family and the case of their missing loved one. They are concerned that the finding of a woman's body was not originally brought to their attention by Gardaí, considering they believed that Priscilla may have had access to a Volkswagen car owned by the Kavanaghs. The case is referred to a new cold case unit, that was the Garda Serious Crime Review Unit, headed by Superintendent Christy Mangan. We've mentioned Christy before in cases. It will make...
Oh, he's quite prominent, yeah.
Yeah, 87 recommendations to be followed up. However, no new evidence is uncovered. The body of the woman washed ashore in Kilmuckridge, Wexford, is exhumed and DNA proves it is not Priscilla. Another find of a female body on the island of Just in Germany in 2001 yields the same disappointing end. She too is someone else, lost to another family. Just going to take an insert here about the general idea of the Wexford women and body finds and what the family had to go through, and you're going to hear from Claire, Priscilla's sister.
It took us through a story which was carried in a local paper in Wexford to learn about the remains being found. And even when we became aware of it, we were surprised to realise that there were similarities to Priscilla. We were told that they had cross-referenced this woman's remains with all of the missing women from that period of time, and that they hadn't found a match. So at that stage, they didn't advise any family of the remains having been found. Nobody contacted us. We got no phone call to say, even though it's a long shot, we have found remains in Wexford. It was a shock to realise that it didn't work that way. My sister described it as lost property in a railway station, where you had to actually go to the guards and ask them, do you have remains? So yeah, it was very, very disturbing. There were significant similarities to Priscilla. She took a size 39. She wore jeans, and she wore the particular brand of jeans. She had Volkswagen keys on her, and Priscilla had access to a Volkswagen car. And my memory of it was that at the time Priscilla went missing, the keys of the car that she had access to were also missing. So there was quite a lot of similarities. I just had to get to the bottom of it to know if it's possible that she could be Priscilla. So our next approach then was to contact the Department of Justice and ask that there would be an exhumation and DNA obtained from the remains. Efforts and lobbying and communication with everybody we could possibly communicate with at that time resulted in the agreement to exhume the remains.
I got involved in this case at the time. There was a question raised in the Dáil as to whether the remains belonged to Priscilla Clarke. Getting permission to exhume a body involves a lot of offices. You have to get permission from the coroner, you have to get permission from the Minister for Justice and the County Council. Rather than upset anybody visiting the graveyard, we started the exhumation at 4:30 in the morning and had it completed before the graveyard opened to the public. I escorted the remains up to the State Pathologist's office, Professor Cassidy at the time, to carry out a post-mortem. But our own forensic science laboratory at that time wasn't able to generate a profile from the remains that we could compare against Priscilla's. I took 2 of the bones from the arms of the deceased and put them into a steel case for the purpose of taking them over to Birmingham to see if they could extract a DNA profile from the bones. I was satisfied that they would be capable of generating a profile, and they didn't let me down. At the time of the original post-mortem examination, the skull was taken away to be further examined. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, that skull went missing. When we exhumed the remains in 2007, obviously it wasn't present, and despite all the searches since then, has never been found.
In November 2007, the then Garda Commissioner Noel Conroy wrote to the Department of Justice. Now, he gave a detailed explanation as to why he was recommending the Ballymona woman should be exhumed. He wrote, "In an attempt to progress the investigation, the services of the then state pathologist, Dr. John Harbison, were enlisted, and on the 5th of April 1996, a second post-mortem was carried out at Waterford Regional Hospital. Dr. Harbison removed the skull and lower jaw for further examination and also took some samples of flesh. No written report exists from Dr. Harbison on his findings. It also appears that the samples taken possession of by Dr. Harbison cannot now be located."
We got the information that the woman's remains did not have her skull. That was very upsetting to find out. Very, very, very upsetting.
Priscilla Clarke's family had lobbied the Department of Justice to have the Ballymona woman's remains exhumed so a DNA profile could be obtained and checked against Priscilla's. Now, that was done in November 2007, but when the remains were exhumed from Crosstown Cemetery, it was discovered the Ballymona woman's skull wasn't with the rest of her remains.
To have part of her remains lost was very, very distressing. It's absolutely impossible to understand how something as important as that could be mislaid. Without this skull, we never know what she looked like.
We have to look after our deceased, and we do that. But what about the deceased that are unidentified? It's not known if it has been kept as a sample for something. It is not known has it been kept for carry out another methodology like facial approximation or something like that. A lot has changed since then, and I would be very surprised if anything like that would have even happened in the last 10 years or so.
Although it was a disappointment to the Clarke family, we were able to eliminate Priscilla as being the remains. What the Gardaí have to be wary of too is they don't want to create false hope. It's like a festering wound when someone's missing. All you're going to do is aggravate that wound unnecessarily. On the 30th of August 2008, we reburied her, the lady from Ballymona. We went through a proper funeral ceremony. We had a priest there and we reinterred her.
I do feel a connection with that woman because it is the opposite side of where we are. My own mother said that even if she's not her daughter, she's somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. That grave and that woman would have rested forever with nobody ever casting a thought on her. And that was wrong. She has a name. We don't know it yet, but she has a name, she has a family, and there is an obligation on the state to restore the identity. The Gardaí have a comprehensive website where they post photographs of missing people. They don't have any similar website where they publicise the unidentified, because families will follow those websites.
One of the ideas that I had was a database system that if the coroners asked, or if investigating officers asked, or if the family asked, if the forensic scientist asked, what's happening in that particular case, we have the answer. As technology develops, forensic technology particularly, and it continues to improve, it is crucial to have knowledge of and access to any unidentified remains that had been examined maybe 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, or where techniques had not been as advanced as they are now. From now on, for example, any sampling that takes place should actually take into account possible advances. So we don't have to go back again and maybe exhume a body.
Maybe she came off a ferry, maybe she went into the water from the UK or from France. But I believe myself that she is not from Ireland. I literally went through thousands of missing females on what's called the Doe Network, the website where they list all missing people who haven't been seen or have run away from home or believed murdered or believed dead. I was able to supply her DNA profile, her height, approximate age, clothing, etc., and send them off to Interpol. But to date, we haven't heard anything back. But I guarantee you, someone is looking for her. There's someone out there, some family, that's missing her.
Second to finding Priscilla and laying her to rest, getting identification for the woman who rests in Crosstown would be next of importance to me. To know who she was, what she looked like, and to give her back her identity.
In 2008, Priscilla's father, Paddy, passes away aged 91. After the death, the family would only truly understand the tireless efforts their father went to when they discover countless letters and correspondence he had written over 20 years. 2010. In April 2010, a fishing trawler, the Willie B, found a skull in their nets 56 kilometres south of Kilmore Quay, Wexford. The remains were handed over to Detective Sergeant Jerry Keeley, who was a crime scene examiner and forensic anthropologist at the time. Tests on one of the woman's teeth ruled her out as any of the missing women in Ireland at the time, including Priscilla Clarke. The detective sergeant had a facial reconstruction completed and sent it to Interpol. By September, Keeley was contacted by Interpol about a possible candidate, and DNA eventually did match the woman's remains to 45-year-old Patricia Sarah Abbott from Pembroke, Wales. Sarah had gone walking along a cliff path at Monabeer near Tenby in Wales on the evening of December 15th, 2009. Suffering from Addison's disease and severe depression, initially her inquest finding had concluded that she likely died by suicide. Her skull showed a contusion and that she was probably alive when she entered the water from the cliff top, leaving open the possibility that she simply had an accident in the darkness and fell following a fainting spell. In June 2018, case review and Claire Clarke Keane, Priscilla's sister, this is an interview, an audio interview on RTE Radio. This goes on for a little bit, so when we come back, we'll move on.
It's now 30 years since the disappearance of a young woman named Priscilla Clarke in circumstances which were first investigated as a possible subversive kidnapping, but which Gardaí later said they believed did not involve foul play. The 25-year-old from RD in County Louth went missing with another woman for whom she worked as a childminder on the 3rd of May 1988. Priscilla Clarke's family say they have many unanswered questions about how her case was handled, and they want Gardaí to provide them with a copy of a cold case review into her disappearance, which is understood to have found some shortcomings in the original Garda investigation. Our reporter John Burke has this report.
Garda sub-aqua divers searched the River Dargle, which was in flood yesterday after heavy rain. The Civil Defence and Air Corps assisted the search, but there's still no trace of the two women. The alarm was raised after their two horses returned last night fully saddled.
An early news report from May 1988, on the day after Priscilla Clarke and her employer Lynda Kavanagh disappeared. They had been out horse riding near Lynda Kavanagh's home in County Wicklow.
People say that the point on the river where horses normally cross was a torrent yesterday. The horses were wet when found, even under the saddle, indicating that they had been in the river.
Early reports alluded to the possibility that the two women had either drowned while crossing the River Dargle or they had been victims of a subversive kidnapping.
Later today, armed troops joined in the search and helped comb the riverbank and surrounding woodland, while divers continued.
On the day following the women's disappearance, Gardaí said all possibilities were still being considered.
Have you ruled out the possibility that this may have been an abduction of some kind?
Nothing can be ruled out at this stage.
Meanwhile, there was tight security at the home of property millionaire Mark Kavanagh, and only Gardaí and family friends were being allowed in today to comfort the family.
Retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, who later reviewed the case.
It's a very high-profile search. Gardaí, Army, Civil Defence, the use of the helicopters, things that were unheard of basically at the time.
But within days, the suspicion of foul play had ended. The body of Lynda Kavanagh was found.
Searching. About 2 days later, Lynda's body was found trapped in the branches of a tree. And the speculation was that had she not become entangled in the branches, her body would have been swept out to sea.
After Lynda Kavanagh's body was found, the case attracted less attention. But the body of her friend and employee Priscilla Clarke remained missing. 30 years later, her body still remains unaccounted for. Priscilla Clarke's sister Claire.
She was a fun-loving person. She's the kind of person who would never leave a room without hugging everybody she met. Just a wonderful person and somebody that we were all completely devastated at her loss. Just one of these people that you can't imagine life without going forward. In the initial stages, we were briefed, but we still felt that we weren't fully included, and information that we should have been told at the time wasn't shared with the family.
For 2 decades, the case lingered on. Priscilla Clarke's family kept applying pressure, and in 2008, just 10 years ago, Gardaí consented to a cold case review into Priscilla Clarke's disappearance.
Our objective was to get a review of the case done because we had a lot of questions which remained unanswered. We thought that we would have a document in our hand at the end of that we would actually be able to sit down with something tangible and we could put some issues to bed and not have them resurrecting for us all the time.
Now retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey was a pivotal member of that cold case unit. He says the review affirmed the belief that there was no foul play.
Reading through the file, we find there was suggestions of people acting suspiciously in the area, if strangers been seen in an estate adjoining the family home and that. But we were satisfied at the end of our inquiry and the review that it was an unfortunate accident.
Alan Bailey said Gardaí put in a strong effort to find both women.
I know it's speculated that Lynda was found and that the searches were wound down, but that's not the reality when you read the actual file, because we're looking at the man who was involved in searches after that, and eventually, as all these missing person cases, the searches would be stood down.
The Garda Cold Case Review team made dozens of recommendations, the most important one being that families needed to be better informed.
In our review, we would have maybe highlighted a few what we saw were shortcomings in the actual Garda investigation. Of course, the big one being the liaison with the families. That maybe back in 1988 it wasn't considered as important as it's seen to be today. And time again in reviews of cold cases, that's something we found in the cold case unit.
And what specifically do you mean in terms of the engagement with the missing person's family to keep them informed?
Keep them informed, yeah. Nowadays, one of the first things that will happen when a serious investigation is established is that a family liaison person will be established also. And that person will be charged with staying in touch with the family and letting them know this is where we're at and this is what's happening. So perhaps that's certainly one shortfall.
But after the cold case unit was completed, Priscilla Clarke's family asked for permission to see it, but it was denied.
We were very disappointed when, at the end of that process, we had no document to look at or to review, and we were told that there were 80 recommendations made as part of the review, but we would not have cited those, and that we could ask questions. If any question came to our mind, we could pose that question and they would do their best to answer it. But that wasn't satisfactory. I think a family should have something that they can use for their own information, something that just gives comfort to them that the work has been done and it's been done properly and robustly, and that there aren't obvious gaps in it.
We asked Gardaí if they could explain why, 30 years after Priscilla Clarke went missing, the cold case report into her disappearance could not be shared with her family. But no answer was provided. Retired Detective Sergeant Alan Bailey, who worked on the cold case review, said he could see justification for not releasing certain types of files to families, but less so in the case of others, and especially where no foul play was suspected.
If there's people being interviewed, as suspects right now, you couldn't share that, but you can tell the family a lot.
In a case, though, such as Priscilla's, where there's no foul play suspected, but there may be questions about one or two aspects of how the case was handled originally, would you have any difficulty or see any problems with sharing a file like that with the family?
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not. And I'd like to think that if the family today still have concerns, that it's only a case of approaching the Garda authorities and asking, sit down. There's nothing hidden in the file. I can tell you that, having read it.
Senior clinical psychologist Mark Smith has written about the impact on families whose loved ones go missing. And he says where possible, it's better families have access to verifiable facts.
What we do know is crucial is that facts will always be better than innuendo or rumour. People can process facts, but they cannot process what-ifs. So when the Gardaí do have pertinent facts, it is best to provide those facts only, and it is hard for families to wait to get that information, but people will always process facts better than they will innuendo or rumours.
30 years on, and with many unanswered questions, what next for the family of Priscilla Clarke? Her sister Claire again.
I think it would make a very big difference to have that document. We understand that there are obviously elements of it which cannot be disclosed, but there is a significant part of it that should be disclosed to the family. On the one hand, they're saying that they don't believe that there was any criminal element to the case, but on the other hand, they are then saying that they can't share the review report with ourselves, and we're at a loss to know why. In this day and age, the time, 30 years has gone by, and the amount of official paper which we have received around Priscilla's case is still very limited.
2021, sadly, Nan Clarke, Priscilla's mother, aged 92, passes away. There was some age gap between Paddy, the husband, and Nan, and Clarke, the mother. Despite
good ages, though.
Yeah, really amazing ages for both of them. So from 2022 to date, despite renewed appeals into the whereabouts of Priscilla, her cases had very limited attention, particularly since the mid-1990s. And Priscilla's siblings now fight the campaign. Her sister Claire, who you heard from in the audio piece above, in a 2022 media interview expressed the fear that her sister's body was eventually found years ago, but she was buried in an unmarked grave by authorities.
Oh God, that's very grim if that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you heard of such things happening? Would that be the possibility, would you think?
Yeah, I won't go into it because it's personal. I have a friend who passed away in 2007, and we have been tirelessly looking at where he was buried. We believe he was buried in Ireland. He was originally from England, and we believe he's buried in an unmarked grave here in Ireland, and we still haven't been able to find where exactly.
Terrible, yeah.
So I can tell you from personal account, it does happen.
It does happen. God, that's so terrible for the families.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to our conclusions and analysis. Despite the initial high profile this case got back in 1988, it remains stark for different reasons for two families. Both endured a horrible tragedy, but their outcomes were very different. With some cases we covered on Radio Espial, it is difficult to reach concrete conclusions with missing person cases where someone vanishes and there are no answers for decades. So let me be clear from the outset in this case. While cases can have their frustrations over a long period of time and many critical elements still remain unresolved, this isn't one of them. Time and the lack of answers can sometimes create its own stories and wild speculation. As each year ticks by for the Clarke family, the void of answers gets replaced with later imposed myths and wild ideas. We forget about the evidence at the time and can sometimes indulge in moments of revisited opinion and a clouded quagmire of scenarios and whataboutery. That's not what we do here. We look at the case and we look at the evidence at the time and try to understand it. And if new approaches and new evidence can shed light on a case and provide some answers and possibilities. While there are plenty of questions in this case, every eyewitness and gathered shred of evidence points to a tragic accident for two women out on an impromptu ride on horses in early May 1988. It is easy to remove any possibility of some elaborate kidnap of a wealthy family member or some interrelationship complexity and plot that leads to sinister goings on behind closed doors. Without answers, sometimes we can invent with a degree of imagination our own questions and provide the answers without evidence. The evidence in this case speaks for itself. Two women, two horses, an impromptu riding trip, one body recovered, one still missing, and an hour's riding trek that in hindsight possibly bit off more than it was really ready for. More tragedy and circumstance than mystery and intrigue. The outcome was very difficult for both the Clarke and Kavanagh families. When I first heard about this case way back in, I think it was the late 1980s, the news reports of the search set the wrong colour and skew, as they often do. It will be everlasting, and in many ways the case has always suffered from the headlines like wife of businessman missing after horse riding accident, the search for Lynda and her nanny, body of Lynda found and search continues for nanny. The media does what it does, and we should remember that. It finds the hook.
Yeah, it's always the way. It's like, I don't know if you could quite call it white woman syndrome, like, you know, that thing where the media always focus on like wealthy white women or whatever. They love stories about them, but it's quite borderline. Like, although there's nothing sinister and you can never say anything against it, like, it's a terrible thing to point out because the Kavanagh family suffered a massive tragedy, and like, and the Kavanagh lost her life early, and it's absolutely nothing to do with her why the media does this, but then it's unfair on Priscilla's family.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know? It's a crazy concept. I don't know if that would be the right word. It's very hard to understand why the media would do it. But
yeah, no, unfortunately, media will be irresponsible, and it sells papers, and media sometimes are less concerned with the facts and want to more deal with the story amid the facts, and the facts get cast aside then. It finds the hook to turn a news event into a story and plot complete with all its characters. That's no fault of the Kavanagh family, but the moment Lynda Kavanagh's body was recovered from the River Dargle on Thursday, the 5th of May 1988, Priscilla Clarke became, in an instant, the young missing nanny. In a bizarre twist, she was reduced from being Priscilla Clarke, loving daughter and sister, to being the nanny. Over the years, I've often contemplated how this case would have been dealt with by the Gardaí and the media if Priscilla was the one recovered from the River Dargle first. I don't know what exchanges happened when Mark Kavanagh and Paddy Clarke turned up at Loughlinstown Hospital to identify a body. Mark went in first. I think the Gardaí already chose that order because they already suspected the identity of the woman found. Families are close. They surround themselves with people they can rely on to support them. The Ballyhoney house was quickly full of neighbours and supporting family by 10 p.m. on that evening of May the 3rd. The Gardaí had been informed. Some would argue why Mark Kavanagh had not contacted the Clarke family until 2:30 a.m. I don't really read a great deal into this. Again, in potential grief and challenge, families immediately centre around each other, Kieran.
Yeah, no, I agree fully with you there, Mick. There's nothing to read into anything here, like about like behaviour of Mark Kavanagh or anything like that. There's like absolute tragedy. Like, and obviously he like Priscilla missing as well. Like he would have seen her most days, and his kids and all. Like that's 2 losses to his children. Like so,
it's
behaviour.
You know, and for something like that, you're lost in a void in space, and you rely and think everyone else is doing the things you cannot bring yourself to do or face when in shock and trauma. And that happens to us all when we lose someone, or we suspect we've just lost someone in a traumatic circumstance. And as I always warn in many cases, it's important not to judge or assume everyone else reacts and does what you think and you would do in those circumstances. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant what you would do. Okay. That river crossing, and going back to that diagram we discussed earlier. All evidence and points lead here. It is what it is. I'm not a horse rider. I'm not a horseman. But I understand human behaviour and the case physics and geology of a location. And I did this afternoon speak to a couple of horsemen who know a hell of a lot more than I do. While Priscilla was on Sheila D and Lynda on Fudge, this was never a river crossing. They should have attempted to cross the River Dargle on that day with a swollen river and increased level and current. They greatly underestimated the terrain and power of Mother Nature. Let's go back to that diagram I showed you earlier. Now, I'm not going to overplay on this. You have the minimum and maximum water levels. That's 3 to 4 feet where you see the 9 and 12 hands high. That blue patch, transparent blue patch passing through. We know there were other areas close to the proximity where it's suspected they went in, where the hoof prints ended, and it was even higher. It was up to 6 or 7 feet. It was fast flowing. It was rapid water. One only has to contemplate that Lynda's body was found to the northeast just 2 days later, 5 kilometres from that area, to contemplate the wisdom of this crossing. This diagram doesn't even take into account the steep fall from the bank into the centre of the river, the obstructions, shifting and sinking sediment on the river bed, nor the increasing height, 3 to 4 feet, and flow. It's not rocket science. A horse can't swim.
No, also the like the bottom of the riverbed or whatever, like that can be soft, right?
It's mostly at this time it will be soft by that time of the year.
So
you know, it's and it's no wonder both horses threw their mounts and fled, and were recovered with their saddles sodden with water. That's what a horse is going to do when it struggles in water. Horses are like people. Some horses like water, some don't. You'll get a multitude of answers. Oh, those horses should have been able to cross that river. I'm sorry, that's not. It's not straightforward and as simple as that. And particularly, you had one woman who was on the pony, 13 hands high, with a horse she simply could not have been as familiar with in the space of just 2 or 3 weeks. You can't understand a horse in 2 or 3 weeks. Their personality, what they like, what they're uncomfortable with, where they balk, where they, it takes time. And that's what I was told today. The relationship between a horse rider and a horse takes time. You don't fully understand your horse until you fully put it through the rigors. And taking on a river crossing after a heavy spell of rain is probably not the wisest idea if you don't fully understand the horse that you ultimately are in charge with. So the Gardaí had a theory based on the recovered boot and clothing, and that for some reason Lynda entered the river first on Fudge. Fudge panicked and dismounted Lynda into the water, and Priscilla followed and was also dismounted. She used her upper garment, arm sleeve, turned inside out and rolled it as a cast to reel Lynda in, but failed, and being a strong swimmer, she went in after Lynda to her own peril. There is a reason why Priscilla was on the older and larger horse. She was far more used to horses and farm life in County Louth. Lynda, described as an expert horsewoman, but on a pony she had only become acquainted with in a few short weeks earlier. I've always been bemused by this setup, but perhaps she wanted to get Fudge used to rides and believed that this was the ideal opportunity. Again, I'm not a horseman. I don't know. It takes quite a time to build a relationship with a horse, just like any human relationship. It takes time for a horse to know it and you as its mount and its own characteristics. Reading what it can do and what it is nervous and unwilling to do. Let's move on. How the case of Priscilla Clarke could be dealt with over the following years from 1988. We've spoken about this in other cases. With the find of a body, the media shifted its own created storyline. Wife of wealthy businessman found in river after tragic accident. By July of 1988, Gardaí and their search teams had exhausted the resources to continue. The likelihood was that after weeks, Priscilla Clarke's body had long passed through the River Dargle and been swept out to sea. In time, her body might eventually be discovered by accident and circumstance. Maybe in months, maybe in years to come. This is the agony for one of the families of any missing person, particularly those who go missing on a river or along sea coasts. Nature does its work. Every time a body is uncovered or comes to surface in water, hundreds of families of missing people take note and grasp on any possibility of resolution. I can't answer why the Clarke family experienced long periods of lack of communication and updates from the Gardaí team investigating the case of Priscilla. That is for them to examine their protocols when a family of a missing person should be contacted on the discovery of an unidentified body. In the 2 cases cited above, and relating to women found on or off the Wexford coast, I can think of a few, and it seems clear to me that the Clarke family were not in possession of fully understood all the relevant evidences finds, the circumstances, the clothing, the boot, the circumstances of the river, etc., and detail they had on the Priscilla Clarke case. Only then might they have realised that the find of a 45-year-old Patricia Sarah Abbott from Pembroke, Wales, or the other Wexford body found, was never likely to be Priscilla. Likewise, the woman's body found on just an island off the very northern coast of Germany. How on earth could a woman's body in a River Dargle end up off the coast on an island of Germany? I don't understand what the thinking was there and why they even thought or entertained that idea. I've long argued that any active or cold case team should be subject to mandatory updates per year with the families of missing persons, regardless of whether there are any case updates or not. Right now, it is left to the discretion of a Garda chief investigator to decide on that, or a senior detective in a case to work above and beyond their remit. Kieran?
You think, you think such a thing could be organised with technology, like in this day and age, couldn't you? Like where it would be, some sort of simple database, so the family can just be contacted like automatically, or it lands on a guard's desk that, oh, you have to ring this family now because the body was found, and just to inform them or whatever. Like it seems in this day and age.
Yeah, look, it's like I said, I don't expect every time a body is found, no matter how remote the possibilities for a family, I don't expect a Garda chief investigator or the head of a review team to be phoning whatever hundreds of families to say, don't be worrying, it's not Johnny, it's not Joe, it's not Maura, it's not that's not feasible.
No, it'd have to be an automated system, like I'm sure with AI or whatever they could come up with something at this stage. But you would hope that like somewhere along the line the family might get some sort of answers, because I think her sister and all like aren't that old, are they?
Claire, and I think the youngest sister, Frida, I think is the younger sister, and Rob is still with us. Yeah, I mean, they campaign away, but particularly Claire, who you hear from in this timeline and program. They're still active on the case, but I don't get the sense of a great deal of activity following the GSCR reviews. I don't get a sense that there's much real activity on this case. It seems to be a kind of
there, wasn't it?
Yeah, if something turns up, obviously being remains on a coast, be it here, be it Wales, the English coast, be it in a river somewhere.
They have found people that have went missing off the coast of Ireland and Wales. There's been a few cases.
And vice versa.
So exactly vice versa.
Sarah, Patricia Sarah Abbott was found in Ireland. She disappeared off the coast of Wales, and vice versa. I'm thinking, one of the memories I had when I went through this case and we were preparing it, I remember the Bernadette Connolly. I'm trying to think, it Malahide Coast or thereabouts that area?
Yeah, Donabate, I think it was.
Donabate.
Yeah.
She was found, I think it was about 3 months later, her body in Wales.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't escape people, even in a short space of time, how quickly a body can travel. And that was on the coast. But even on a river, eventually, what was maybe fortunate or, ironically fortunate, whatever way you want to look at it, is that Lynda's body was found somewhat caught and entangled in overgrowth and trees hanging down in the river, and it got caught there. And it might be the case that Priscilla's body, if she went in after her to try and rescue her, just didn't get caught or held somewhere, and she went out to sea. And God love the family. If she went out to sea, she could be anywhere.
Would you agree with that theory that that Priscilla tried to rescue Lynda because of the way the jacket was knotted?
I don't know enough about the evidence. What I'm annoyed about with the Gardaí is, why haven't we seen the jacket that shows that evidence? Why have we not seen the evidence of the boot with Priscilla's name marked on it? Why haven't we seen it? There's no harm in these years after. There's no harm in showing that evidence now.
There's another one.
Another one out there. She didn't go out with one feckin' boot on, So I really don't understand the lack of just after a number of years with a case like this, it comes to a point, particularly where non-foul play is ruled out. Put all the evidence out there, show all the photographs, put it all out there, And if somebody says, oh, I recognise that, or I saw a boot like that, or I saw a similar garment like that, you know, put it all out there, and you might get some feedback. Kieran, I think that's really where we are with this case. There isn't.
Yeah, hopefully one day you're doing an update about it, because you never know.
Yeah, I hope so. Or likely, and I'm almost sure of it, someday in the future, if it isn't Priscilla Clarke, will be updating a case about somebody found in the water and finally recovered after many years. And unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Hopefully.
Okay, that's it from Kieran and myself. Thank you all for joining us
Mick.
on this timeline. Again, as we say, maybe with new DNA advances, all the databases that supposedly we're told the Gardaí are putting in place, we all hope that Priscilla's sister Claire gets her wishes and the rest of the family, and that Priscilla will one day be finally found and laid to rest with her family. That's it. God bless. Take care. We're hoping maybe to be back with you next week with another case. Don't hold me to that, but I'm hoping we can get a timeline together for you next week. Okay, take care. God bless. We'll see you all.